Hey everyone! Before the episode starts, I just wanted to let you guys know that I am back in Japan and that scheduling of the videos will be back to the old, more frequent style. Also, please take a look at my gaming review channel. You can find the link in the description down below where I review both old and new games, and you can even request games that I will review on there. Thanks, and please enjoy the rest of the episode. As communism had its grip over many continents in the world, there were still those that were clinching to anything but the Red Giant, or Menace, depending on the eye of the beholder. Countries like Brazil and Colombia were not communist, but the fear of its influence spreading was great, and thus it wasn't rare for countries in South America to focus on military might or foreign affairs to strengthen their own position. But of course, the entire continent was not communist-free, and thus, many neighboring countries had their guns pointed towards the communist Venezuela. Some believed a war would be waged eventually to wipe the communists in Venezuela from the face of this earth. In response, Chavez had already taken military precaution. It would never be able to withstand an attack from another neighboring country on its own. But with financial and military backing from the Soviet Union, things were very different. At the beginning of 2010, the Winter Olympics took place. They were a brief sigh of relief for the IOC, which was currently being choked by a war for the 2016 Summer Olympics, in which both the American Republic and Soviet Union had presented bids. For the moment, however, the international community could put aside its political differences and marvel at the sporting achievements of every nation at the Abbeville Winter Olympics. For years, the French government had been planning a grand opening ceremony to finally showcase the country's splendor, being the first time they had hosted the Olympics in more than 4 decades. The joy of the Olympics was in the UAPR overshadowed by Angela Davis's final purge. There had been multiple purges in the sense like Stalin did back in the late 30s. By doing this, important political and military figures who might pose a threat were arrested, deported, or worse, executed to maintain Davis's stability. Obviously, this was all done in the shadows to refrain it from becoming public. On the notion of the earlier discussion surrounding Las Vegas, it was indeed decided to level the city as a whole to create opportunity for something new. Rather than something selling the original American dream, important additions to the communist industry would be erected here. With all the events happening at the Winter Olympics, the world's eyes were also looking away from Africa, giving room for important change in various places. First, Gaddafi's treasurer resigned. As fellow coalition members blasted him and the colonel for a revised economic plan, the AIR's treasurer had announced his resignation to the public. He stated this was due to family issues and declining health. But in the Republic halls of power, everybody knew the full truth of political manipulation. If Gaddafi moved against the Communist Party in policy again, he could be facing more cabinet resignations. The next news came from Ethiopia. At the conclusion of the 2010 Ethiopian Workers' Party convention, President Desalegns' Soviet-aligned faction had maintained its strong standing both within Shango and throughout Ethiopia. It seemed for now that the president's shaky ground had become stable once again, and he could push for reforms he wished with little expectation of backlash from its own government. What was noteworthy was that his first actions were religion-based. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion had remained relatively hidden from the public for millennia. None had been allowed to enter, and even the socialist Ethiopian government had remained reluctant to enter due to the possible public outcry. This was all due to the rumor that its chapel held the famed Ark of the Covenant. But now apparently President Desalegns no longer cared about public outcry, as he ordered several construction teams to overrun the chapel and, if nothing was found, destroy it. Part of phase 1 of removing religion from everyday Ethiopian life. The destruction of the chapel resulted in a somewhat expected discovery. The Ark was nowhere to be seen. With more traditional communist ideology increasing its grip in Africa, Muammar Gaddafi had its men stationed at the border. His Arab Islamic Republic would not fall to exterior influence, though it was from within that he needed to see the approach of danger. Then at the end of February of 2010, news came out that the leader of the mighty Soviet Union had died. As Chairman Yazov was attending a state tour of the recently opened European Liberation Museum, one of his supposedly loyal guards opened fire on the head of state, killing him almost instantly. As the rogue bodyguard was terminated by his colleagues, the other Politburo members rushed to Yazov's side, only to see the bloody mess that was until that moment the most powerful person in the world. The news came as a shock to the entire globe. It gave no one time to prepare, though executions of nation leaders were nothing new. Politicians in the West knew all too well that there were multiple people ready to take over the lead of the Union, some better for worse. The next person who held the reins of the Soviet Union had the power to plunge the world once again in total darkness. Shortly after, it was announced who the new chairman would be. Gennady Zyuganov, a loyal member of Chairman Yazov's faction within the Soviet government, was elected to be his mentor's successor. This was expected by many both within Russia and outside, as Zyuganov essentially became Yazov's second-in-command in all state affairs, even traveling around the world to meet with Soviet-friendly governments. Many other nations sighed of relief. Though Zyuganov had no intentions of letting his totalist regime diminish, he wasn't out for blood, unlike some in the Politburo. It would seem that the new leader would keep strengthening its own nation through diplomacy, which was a welcome gift to many. News after news kept piling up. It was a time of real turmoil, though most of it happened far from the televisions and monitors from the people in the West. Supposedly during the meeting between Tunisia's governor and Colonel Gaddafi, the head of state urged his subordinate to officially ban and purge the Tunisian Communist Party. While the Libyan Communist Party remained the second largest political faction within the General People's Congress, its power was not legally binding within Tunisia under the treaties of 1974. The governor could easily have refused Gaddafi's demands, but the two's great friendship and cordial political relationship between Libya and Tunisia brought him to voluntarily accept. On this day, members of the Tunisian Communist Party were awoken from their sleeps by the army and immediately arrested for treason against the socialist state of Tunisia. The state of communism in Africa was worrying to some countries who still opposed the ideology. Though Europe was basically under control of the Soviet Union, there were still those, even a few supporting communism, who would stand against them were they to expand beyond. Though the Soviet Union did not particularly let their presence known in the continent of Africa, it was clear that some of the political figures or parties were backed by the higher-ups in the Soviet Union. This way, they could move in the shadows. Then on March the 4th of 2010, terrible news struck the United Kingdom. The night before, Princess Diana of Wales left Ireland on a private jet and arrived in London with her son, Prince William. After visiting the Republic for a few weeks, the pair were eager to see Harry, Charles, and Kate again. While wary from her late flight and irritated by an unaccommodating hotel service, the princess decided to drive herself to Buckingham Palace. Diana and William departed from Heathrow Airport through a runway exit just past midnight, heading for central London, purposefully avoiding any paparazzi that may have been alerted to their presence. After having arrived in London proper, the pair drove past the Science Museum and along Queen's Gate. At around 12:41 a.m. at the intersection with Cromwell Road, Diana was seemingly not paying attention to the situation in front of her and collided with another car at significant speeds. She proceeded to lose control of the car, swerving to the left before colliding again head-on with the walls of the Yemeni embassy. Finally coming to a stop, onlookers rushed to the car, only to find the bloody mess that was Princess Diana, and a terribly injured Prince William in the back. The Princess of Wales was pronounced dead at the scene, and her son was taken to the family's private hospital. Though initially industrial plans had been laid on the table regarding the UK, the sudden death of the princess changed these plans. The British higher-ups knew that the princess was loved by many, and that it would put them in a bad light if they put finances before dignity. Thus, they would plunge the country in mourning for an entire month. The flag would be flown half-mast. Despite this sign of respect, it had the desired effect of an increase in political support, as the people of the UK felt more united than ever in a time of mourning.